Hello, hello, hello. Jordan Sheridan live. Status Coup live earlier today. We will be live again at 5 o'clock Eastern time, normal time. But we had to come live, obviously, with the big breaking news that if you grew up in New York or know anything about Donald Trump and the Trump uh, real estate empire, yeah, not exactly shocking. But let me wait for more people to trickle in here since we just came live. Smash that like button, share this live stream so we can get this breaking news out to as many people as possible. Hey, in the live chat, I see you. I see you. Smash that like button, share. Quite the news. Quite the news that is now out. Colin, if we could send that text message too, would be great. Donald Trump is in a world of trouble. Donald Trump is in a world of trouble. They called him Teflon Don for a long time, but chickens seem to be coming home to roost if you are Donald Trump. So obviously, we're going to get into the major breaking news that the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, after a 3-year investigation, has filed heavy-duty civil charges against Donald Trump, all of his children, except for Tiffany, she's left out, and is referring criminal charges to the proper New York state authorities and federal authorities. So although Letitia James, and we're going to play her press conference that announces what they found, which is just a staggering amount of fraud over decades. Although she her lawsuit is civil, there is potential for criminal charges to come out of this too, based on what they found. So we'll get into all of it. I want to wait till we get the viewership up so I don't have to start and stop. Thank you for the belated birthday wishes. It was my birthday yesterday. Really appreciate a lot of kind comments on Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff. 36 years young. Don't feel 36, feel a little bit older, but feeling good. And had a nice day, had a nice dinner with my wife and dog, and now back at it again. All right, so let's get into it. Obviously, Donald Trump has it going on right now from many different directions. There's clearly the Department of Justice investigation, where the DOJ is investigating Trump for the classified documents and all that. Then you have the Georgia prosecutor investigating Trump over the perfect phone call, where he said, "Find me 11,000 more votes." Of course, you have the Department of Justice investigating January 6th, which we believe they're investigating Trump too. So there's a lot going on as far as investigations into Donald Trump. But Attorney General Letitia James of New York actually has her investigation preceded most of these other investigations and has been going on for 3 years. So we're going to kind of start and stop as we go, her press conference. But she found basically decades long fraud, including Trump inflating his assets. I wonder why he never wanted to show his tax returns. Insurance fraud, tax evasion, and a whole lot of other things. So smash that like button, share this live stream, and now let's start with the beginning of her press conference.
Trump and the Trump Organization repeatedly and persistently manipulated the value of assets to induce banks to lend money to the Trump Organization on more favorable terms than would otherwise have been available to the company, to pay lower taxes, to satisfy continuing loan agreements, and to induce insurance companies to provide insurance coverage for higher limits and at lower premiums. This conduct was all in violation of Executive Law, Section 6312, which gives the Attorney General broad and special powers to go after persistent and repeated fraud and illegality. As part of demonstrating illegality under that section of Law 6312, we show that they violated several state criminal laws, including falsifying business records, issuing false financial statements, insurance fraud, and engaging in a conspiracy to commit each of these state law violations. We believe the conduct alleged in this action also violates federal criminal law, including issuing false statements to financial institutions and bank fraud. And we are referring those criminal violations that we've uncovered to the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York and the Internal Revenue Service. As a result of these violations, we are asking the court to, among other things, permanently bar Mr. Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, Eric Trump, from serving as an officer or director in any corporation or similar entity registered and or licensed in New York. To bar Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization from entering into any New York State commercial real estate acquisition or from applying for loans from any financial institution in New York for 5 years. To pay for the financial benefits obtained as a result of the persistent fraudulent practices at an estimated $250 million. And towards the end of
that is just some of it. $250 billion worth of fraud. Her investigation found inflating assets, which probably is why he never wanted to provide his tax returns, insurance fraud. And basically, she's saying that she believes that there are there are crimes criminally, not just civil there. Colin, can we just play, instead of the clips, can we actually play the press conference? And I'll tell you to speed through if we're re-airing any of it.
Following a comprehensive 3-year investigation by my office, including witnesses, interviews with more than 65 witnesses, and review of millions of documents that were submitted by Mr. Trump and others, I am announcing that today, as part of his efforts to generate profits for himself, his family, and his company, the complaint demonstrates that Donald Trump falsely inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself and to cheat the system, thereby cheating all of us. He did this with the help of the other defendants, his children, Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, and Eric Trump, and former Trump Organization CFO Alan Weiselberg and Trump Organization Controller Jeffrey McConney. Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization repeatedly and persistently manipulated the value of assets to induce banks to lend money to the Trump Organization on more favorable terms than would otherwise have been available to the company, to pay lower taxes, to satisfy continuing loan agreements, and to induce insurance companies to provide insurance coverage for higher limits and at lower premiums. This conduct was all in violation of Executive Law, Section 6312, which gives the Attorney General broad and special powers to go after persistent and repeated fraud and illegality. As part of demonstrating illegality under that section of Law 6312, we show that they violated several state criminal laws, including falsifying business records, issuing false financial statements, insurance fraud, and engaging in a conspiracy to commit each of these state law violations. We believe the conduct alleged in this action also violates federal criminal law, including issuing false statements to financial institutions, and bank fraud. And we are referring those criminal violations that we've uncovered to the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York and the Internal Revenue Service. As a result of these violations, we are asking the court to, among other things, permanently bar Mr. Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, of financial condition that were prepared annually by and for Mr. Trump, specifically from 2011 to 2021. These statements were compiled by the Trump Organization executives and were issued as a compilation report by Mr. Trump's accounting firm. The statements are explicit that the preparation was the responsibility of Mr. Trump. Or starting in 2016, the trustees of his trust, Donald Trump Jr. and Alan Weiselberg, for the sole beneficiary, for the sole benefit of Mr. Donald Trump. Each statement was personally certified as accurate by Mr. Trump or by one of his trustees.
You can pull
as
up.
part of.
So we're going to play more of it, but that's a good place to stop. And smash that like button. We got 240 people watching, only 115 likes. So I'm not going to pretend to be a financial expert or, an economics reporter. But the bottom line is, obviously, if you are in the real estate business, which Trump was, thanks to his daddy loaning him millions of dollars to start, self-made Trump, whose papa, who is another criminal, gave him, a head start with, I think it was $1 million loan. Basically, the worth of the net worth, the value of your properties is obviously critically important if you are a real estate company. So if you're going to get loans from banks, obviously the loan size, the amount of money you're going to get from banks is going to be based on your property value. Now, a lot of banks look the other way. Maybe they know, they're kind of fudging the numbers here or there, but we do business with this company, whether it's Trump or another company. Often, they generally pay back with interest, and we'll look the other way as they fudge assets. Some companies do fudge their assets here or there. What she is describing is not like a couple dollars and cents here inflated. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in made up value that Donald Trump and his kiddies conjured out of thin air to basically inflate everything. Donald Trump's net worth, the value of his company, the values of his properties. This goes down the board. His properties, the golf courses, the hotels, his licensing deals all over the world, because Trump doesn't own a lot of these hotels. He just licenses his name to go on the hotels. But all of that, the value goes up if Trump's fundamental business and real estate holdings go up. So this is basically what the Attorney General of New York, and her investigators have found is just essentially a major fraud that played out over decades. We're talking going back to the 1990s. And by the way, let's not pretend, accountants weren't involved with this. Let's not pretend some of the banks weren't involved with this and didn't know better. Let's not pretend politicians in New York who constantly look the other way, from Mayor Giuliani back in the day, to Patterson, to Spitzer, to you go down the list of mayors who showered Donald Trump and the Trump real estate empire with tax cuts, tax giveaways, basically corporate welfare, because Trump was bringing in business to New York. So this is not just Trump. This is the whole apparatus that was involved with this. Also, obviously, there's a reason he never wanted to show his taxes. No one is under audit for a decade. And you can show your taxes even if you're under audit. He didn't want to show his taxes because he was not a billionaire. And that, let me tell you something. I covered Trump in 2016. I went around this country. I covered him in 2020. A lot of what you heard out of Trump supporters was, hey, maybe it's time for a businessman. He's a billionaire. He knows what he's doing. I heard the billionaire word a lot. And a lot of working class people, for better or worse, they're attracted to that. They think, oh, this guy is, a wealthy, visionary, successful businessman. He, built his empire from scratch, even though he didn't. His daddy handed him $1 million. He's a billionaire. Psychologically, that attracts a lot of people to frauds and grifters like Trump, because the word billionaire is thrown out. Well, there's never any evidence he was a billionaire. He basically defrauded and conjured up all of it. And you don't get away with this for years and years and years unless politicians look the other way, because, again, he was buying off politicians, which he proudly ran on. Say, I know the system. I used it. I bought off Jeb Bush. I bought off all these politicians. Accounting firms, banks. If you want to get into the weeds, you could look into Deutsche Bank, who was a lender to the Trump organization and Trump for many years. And there's alleged criminality with Deutsche Bank. So there's a lot. There's a lot here. Let's keep playing.
Loan process with the intent that the information in the statement would be relied upon by banks and insurers. Mr. Trump and Mr. Weiselberg would meet to review and approve the final statement every year. Mr. Trump made known through Alan Weiselberg that he wanted his net worth reflected on the statements to increase, a desire Mr. Weiselberg and others carried out year after year in their fraudulent preparation of the statements. Their Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, and they refused to answer. When asked under oath if he, Mr. Trump, continued to review and approve the statements after becoming President of the United States in 2017, Mr. Trump, again, invoked his Fifth Amendment privilege and refused to answer. Over the course of our investigation, we found that Mr.
So, to be clear, this is not always. In some cases, people invoke their Fifth Amendment right, and they're innocent. But in most cases, when you're invoking your Fifth Amendment right, it's because you're about to commit a crime if you actually answer truthfully. You could either lie and commit a crime or answer truthfully, and you're giving the prosecution a layup to prosecute you successfully. So the fact that Trump was invoking his Fifth Amendment, even on something as simple as, did you certify that these financial statements and asset disclosures did you certify that he was invoking his Fifth Amendment? He knows they have him dead to rights. I'm sure he's going to rant and say this is the deep state and Biden coming after him, but you don't invoke your Fifth Amendment right on something as simple as, did you certify as the head of the Trump organization that these numbers were correct, unless I'm about to incriminate myself. Let's keep going.
Trump, his children, the Trump organization created and used more than 200 false and misleading asset valuations on his statement of financial condition over that 10-year period. They issued statements that were in clear violation of general accepted principles in the general accounting principles in the United States, despite representing that these statements were prepared in accordance with these principles. Some of the common tactics they used include representing that Mr. Trump had cash on hand that he did not have, ignoring critical restrictions that would significantly impact property values when setting valuations, changing the methodology used to value properties from year to year without reason or notice, and using vastly different methods to value different properties, even in the same year, and including tangible items such as brand premiums, the Trump premium, when calculating an asset's value, despite the fact that they ignored the advice of outside professionals. They also ignored the advice and appraisals of outside professionals, despite claiming those individuals provided certain figures. For example, they received a series of bank-ordered appraisals for the commercial property at 40 Wall Street in New York City that calculated the value of the property at $200 million as of August 2010. And $220 million as of November 2012. Yet, in his 2011 statement, Mr. Trump listed 40 Wall Street with a value of $524 million, which increased to $530 million over the next 2 years, more than twice the value calculated by the professionals. Even more egregious, the $500 million plus valuation was attributed to information from the appraiser who valued the building at just over $200 million. Another deceptive strategy they employed was to use objectively false numbers to calculate property values. Take Mr. Trump's triplex. You know, the triplex apartment in Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue? Mr. Trump represented that his apartment spanned more than 30,000 square feet, which was the basis for valuing the apartment. In reality, the apartment had an area of less than 11,000 square feet, something that Mr. Trump was well aware of. And based on that inflated square footage, the value of the apartment in 2015 and 2016 was $327 million. To this date, no apartment in New York City has ever sold for close to that amount. Tripling the size of the apartment for purposes of the valuation was intentional and deliberate fraud, not an honest mistake. Mr. Trump was intimately familiar with the layout of both the building and the apartment, having personally overseen the construction of both. Despite his sworn testimony before invoking his Fifth Amendment privilege, Mr. Weiselberg conceded that using the false square footage improperly inflated the value of the apartment almost threefold. Mr. Weiselberg admitted that this amounted to an overstatement of, give or take, $200 million. Misrepresenting the size of the apartment was only one of the many ways that Mr. Trump intentionally misvalued his asset for the purposes of increasing his net worth and inducing banks to offer more favorable terms.
All right.
Mr. Trump also
So a couple things. I want to be clear here, because obviously, you know, the ratings is and the playbook of the media is just focused on Trump here. And we will focus on Trump because he is one of the biggest, honestly, until now, one of the most successful charlatans and grifters, possibly in modern history. Trump was more a brand than an actual successful businessman. And remember to smash that like button. We got 420 people watching. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. But only 207 likes. I need every single person to press the like button. But to be clear, because we live in the United Corporations of America, all of this fraud, okay, you're talking about major inflation of assets. She's talking about, oh, he said it was worth $500 million when the appraiser actually had it at $200 million. Even just the square acreage, how big certain properties were. He knew it was 11,000 acres. He knew it was 11,000 acres, but said it was 30,000 acres. All of that stuff, I mean, it's verifiable. There are ways to verify all of this. So this fraud does not happen just because Donald Trump got away with it. and Donald Trump and his accountants and they're so brilliant that they got away with it and they escaped, the eye or the purview of the New York Southern District, which is one of the most powerful state prosecution offices in the country. If you watch Showtime, the show Billions, it's based on the New York Southern District. It's kind of known as like the one step under the Department of Justice. This didn't just escape New York's Attorney General before Letitia James. This didn't just escape New York governors, New York mayors, city council people. Certainly didn't escape high-profile U.S. Congress people from New York, U.S. senators. I mean, this kind of fraud, this kind of inflation, when most of these things, there are ways to verify it, the actual size of properties, the true valuation. Sure, like I said at the beginning, companies can fudge and cherry pick numbers with to inflate assets or, in some cases, deflate the value of properties. This isn't by, a couple decimal points. You're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. He lied about the value of his assets. You're talking significantly smaller size of his properties. So it's not small ball fraud. This is major fraud. Trump didn't get away with this without the subtle wink and a nod from the entire apparatus that is the United Corporations of America, the government, corporate America, the banks. You think Deutsche Bank didn't know that they were fudging the numbers when they were giving those loans? You think Trump's accountants didn't know that they were fudging the numbers? You think politicians that accepted money, including pretty much every Democratic Party politician, Pelosi, Schumer, Biden, they all took money from Trump over the years. Thank you for the belated birthday wishes in the super chat. It was my birthday yesterday, so you're free to say happy birthday with a super chat. 36 years young. So the focus shouldn't only be on Trump. This heavy duty white collar crime, which frankly is criminal, and Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, has said she is referring this matter to the federal criminal authorities and New York state criminal authorities. So Trump's not out of the woods just civilly. This is a massive scheme that you don't get away with unless you have politicians and the whole system on your side. I want to show this. This is from Aaron Blake with the Washington Post. And this is just a screenshot from, I think it's like over 200 pages, this indictment from Letitia James. But part of how Trump got away with this, if you could put up the tweet I sent you, Colin, from Aaron Blake, part of how Trump has gotten away with a lot of this is he's notorious, and he's told his people never leave a paper trail. So this is from the indictment. To cover up this scheme, Mr. Trump and his agents sought to avoid creating documentary record. Mr. Trump advised his employees handling his real estate affairs in the lower Hudson Valley, which included Seven Springs, that he did not want communications between them put in writing. Likewise, on June 18th, 2015, his tax attorney, Miss Dillon, instructed her associate to, quote, call Cushman appraiser Tim Barnes and advise him to limit substantive emails with Scott Blakely, an engineer, and instead use the phone to the extent possible. Want to avoid creating discovery unnecessarily. Discovery is a term for legal evidence. On September 28, 2015, Ms. Dillon sent an email to another associate at her firm. Please use a fresh email when communicating with appraisers so that we avoid to the extent possible email chains. The Cushman appraisers acceded to Ms. Dillon's request. As Mr. Barnes, the senior appraiser, wrote to the junior appraiser, Bedford conversations with engineer, broker, or attorney should be phone calls, not email, whenever possible. I mean, could you imagine for a second if, I mean, you don't have to imagine because I'm sure there are politicians who have said that stuff. Could you imagine for a second if that came out about, I don't know, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Biden, Schumer, that They said, hey, let's limit discussion on, our conversation with Goldman Sachs. Let's limit that to the phone. Hey, let's limit discussion on who we're dialing for dollars today. No emails. Actually, no phone calls. Just meet, at the cafeteria. Oh my God, the right-wing meltdown, rightly so, by the way. Rightly so, over that kind of, hey, don't leave a paper trail. Don't leave discoverable evidence in emails. So, and as president, Trump infamously, no emails, he doesn't email, no text messages, only phone calls. And by the way, if this goes to a criminal matter, if the feds take over criminally, it's likely they might subpoena certain phone calls. Crime is crime. Throw the book at him. Dude was never fit for office, Thubbs says. And by the way, there's plenty of Democrats that are criminals too. So I don't want you to get it twisted. If you're coming here just for Trump bashing, the Democratic Party also has plenty of corruption in it. Literally, I was just in Philadelphia covering inflation, covering just rampant homelessness that's spreading throughout the city, covering the housing crisis. There's literally a real estate developer sitting on city council as a city councilman. So there's corruption across the board, both parties. But this massive fraud is pretty unprecedented. And I also want to point out, his children were all in on it. You think they didn't know about this? Ivanka and Don Jr. and Eric, as they're sitting there on The Apprentice, as judges saying, you're fired. You think they didn't know that they were just complete charlatan grifters, cheating real estate purchasers, cheating banks, cheating you? Of course they knew. It was all a fraud. They had no business having a TV show that, NBC, by the way, framed and created this theatrical reality TV spectacle that this is the symbol of the American dream. Donald Trump built it from ground zero to nothing, and his children are part of the family business. It was all fraud, all of it. And by the way, I'm surprised Jared Kushner's name isn't in this indictment. Maybe authorities are saving Jared Kushner for potential charges about, how'd you get $2 billion from Saudi Arabia? Just saying. Let's keep going with the Attorney General's press conference.
Routinely ignored legal restrictions on development rights and marketability on properties that would significantly decrease property values. For example, let's take Trump Park Avenue in New York. This building contains both commercial and residential space. The unsold residential condo units owned by Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization represented the lion's share of the reported value for this property. Mr. Trump and his children intentionally ignored legal restrictions on some of the units that would have drastically changed the valuation. Specifically, the 12 of those units were actually rent-stabilized apartments. A professional appraiser valued those 12 units at around $750,000, noting that the rent-stabilized units cannot be marketed as individual units for sale because the current tenants cannot be forced to leave. Despite this professional valuation, and Mr. Trump knowing full well the legal restrictions the 12 rent-stabilized units were valued, he valued them collectively on his statements at $49 million. That is about 65 times the appraised valuation. Mr. Trump also blatantly ignored legal restrictions at Mar-A-Lago. Mar-a-Lago was valued on the false premise that it sat on unrestricted property and could be developed for residential use. However, Mr. Trump knew that Mar-a-Lago was subject to a host of onerous restrictions and limitations. Mr. Trump himself signed deeds sharply restricting changes to the property and donating his residential development rights in an effort to get a tax deduction and later to lower his property taxes on the property. The deeds also require Mr. Trump to donate over 23% of Mar-A-Lago's value to the Historic Trust for Historic Preservation if he ever sold it. Despite these significant restrictions, Mr. Trump valued the property based on the false premise that it was an unrestricted residential 18-acre plot of land that could be sold and used as a private home. In fact, the valuations represent that these restrictions don't even exist. The club generated annual revenues of less than $25 million and should have been valued at about $75 million. However, Mar-A-Lago was valued as high as $739 million. Mr. Trump used inappropriate schemes to inflate the value of his other golf clubs. He valued the clubs based on their fixed assets. In other words, the money spent to acquire and to maintain them, despite being informed by valuation professionals that this practice was inappropriate for a club operating as an ongoing business. He again added a brand premium when determining the value of the club, but claimed in his statements that he did not. And he inflated the value of unsold memberships, often by hundreds of thousands of dollars per membership, even in situations where the memberships were given away for free at Mr. Trump's direction. Inflating his reported net worth was just the first part of the scheme. He then used these false statements of financial condition for his own personal gain. Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization have obtained hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate loans and insurance coverage using these statements. Mr. Trump was able to secure much more favorable loan terms by personally guaranteeing the loans based on his reported net worth, as reflected on his statements of financial condition. These statements were integral to Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization's ability to secure loans for a number of properties, including the old post office in Washington, D.C. Mr. Trump's statements were first submitted to the federal government to demonstrate his financial status, his net worth. He then engaged with Deutsche Bank to obtain a loan to redevelop the property. Mr. Trump was able to obtain much more favorable loan terms by personally guaranteeing the loans. So in 2014, he secured a loan from Deutsche Bank for $170 million. And as you know, in May of 22, Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization, they sold the post office, the old post office property, for $375 million, resulting in a $100 million net profit, which was the result of a loan he was able to obtain through the use of false and misleading statements of financial condition.
All right. You can
Separately, Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. Again, there is zero way Trump, his kids, all of this, their whole empire, there is zero way you get away with this for at least 20, 30 years without the government looking the other way. Banks, I mean, Deutsche Bank, Goldman Sachs, they're paying people nine figures at Deutsche Bank, Goldman Sachs to look under the hood at assets, at financial statements, investigating potential clients like Trump. There's no fucking way they didn't know about this for a very long time. And you want to know something? I would just say, Trump's gotten away. He's been Teflon Don for the last 20, 30 years, but I was never jumping on board with the walls are closing in, because there's been plenty of people saying that for plenty of years, and he's gotten away with all of it. I don't know how you wiggle out of this. And again, if you're coming to this late, Trump, the Attorney General of New York, revealed Trump invoked his Fifth Amendment right. He pled the Fifth, which is his right as an American. In some cases, people who are innocent do plead the fifth for a variety of reasons. In most cases, if you're pleading the fifth, you're pleading the fifth because anything you say will help the prosecution nail you for a crime because you committed the crime. Trump pled the fifth when questioned by Attorney General Letitia James and her prosecutors. He pled the fifth repeatedly about all of this, including pleading the fifth on the basic question, did you certify certain financial statements, including your asset valuation, how much your properties were worth? Did you certify these documents? Pled the fifth. You don't plead the fifth for things like that unless you've been told don't give them anything. Anything you say will be used against you, as they say. I mean, Trump has gotten away with this whole time by basically saying this.
They're losers. They're just losers. They're losers. They're just losers.
But you want to know what? Kudos to the Attorney General. This is a 3-year investigation. I think it's very possible that this now becomes a criminal matter. Let me read this tweet. This is from Andrew Weissman. He was at the Department of Justice for 20 years. Breaking, New York State AG announces widespread civil fraud case against Trump. Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric alleges state and federal criminal violations and refers federal crimes to the Southern District of New York and the IRS. The Manhattan District Attorney is likely already evaluating the state crimes of false business records. Note, Alan Weiselberg, guilty plea last month. Alan Weiselberg was his longtime accountant. Alan Weiselberg, guilty plea last month in New York City. Manhattan District Attorney case is cited as proof of this new New York AG civil case, another fallout from that important guilty plea. And Weiselberg basically agreed to turn on Trump I think a month or so ago. I also want to show, this is from Ryan Goodman. He was a former special counsel at the Pentagon. The criminal referrals to the IRS and the Department of Justice may be among the most significant implications of today's actions. Recall, the scheme to which Alan Weiselberg, the longtime Trump Organization CFO, apologies, I called him Trump's accountant. He was the chief financial officer, recently pleaded guilty, included federal tax crimes. Many have been waiting for a federal criminal tax probe. And notice the Republican right-wing meltdown that Biden was giving more money to the IRS because their fear-mongering was now the IRS is going to come after the working class. Well, the IRS certainly does. The IRS certainly does come after the working class. IRS has infamously let crooks, wealthy, mostly white men, off the hook and don't even really look into their taxes. Part of it, a large part of it, is the IRS has notoriously been understaffed. But, I mean, this seems to be pretty cut and dry. If you have a 3-year investigation and she's charging hundreds of billions, at this point, hundreds of millions, possibly into the billions of fudging your financial assets, insurance fraud, tax fraud, you have to think she's got all of this in writing. They've crunched the numbers and you just pass it off. I don't really know how Trump would get out of that. I really don't. Not to mention that's totally separate from what's going on with the Department of Justice investigation into Trump, into the classified documents, which yesterday the special master that Trump begged for basically said to Trump's attorneys, put up or shut up. Either present evidence that you declassified these documents, as Trump says, I declassified it with my magic wand, or I'm not giving you back these documents to look. And if you can't provide evidence that you declassified this, then it's kind of open and shut case. And I'm going to rule in favor of the government having these documents because the government is presenting me evidence they're classified and you're not. So he's kind of getting it from all angles. And to tell you the truth, only a prediction, would not shock me at all if Trump, in a knee-jerk fashion, announced pretty much immediately that he's running for president, so he could create the spectacle of, see, they're coming after me because they want to take down our movement, talking to MAGA. They want to keep us from saving America and making America great, 2.0. And I don't want to make this all about Trump. Again, you can't get away with this for decades without politicians looking the other way, banks, because the banks clearly knew he was inflating assets. They're not dummies. They have some of the smartest number crunchers and nerds in the country that work for these banks. And I'm curious what MAGA Nation thinks. I'm really curious what MAGA Nation thinks. Because honestly, I've covered both of his campaigns. I was on the ground in 2016. I was on the ground in 2020. I probably covered at this point 50 to 60 Trump rallies, in addition to protests and flag drops and all that stuff. I got the therapy bills to prove it. And very little phases them about Donald Trump. I honestly believe, partially, if he shot someone on Fifth Avenue, they might not care. But I will tell you, based on interviews I did on the campaign trail in 2016 and 2020, part of their just emotional, visceral connection to them, which in my view has become kind of cultish worship, was that he's a billionaire. He's a self-made man, even though he wasn't, and his daddy, handed him $1 million. He's look what he built out of nothing. His name is on buildings all over the world. And when Trump talked about America's getting taken to the wood shop, China's eating our lunch, they listened to him and believed that he had superior business instincts, that he was the art of the deal, that he could negotiate the best deals because he's a billionaire. I mean, I think conservatives care. Well, I don't know. I don't want to say all conservatives because they're not all MAGA. There's still, there is somewhat of a base of people that are never Trumpers. But I would think conservatives would care if this guy basically conjured this whole image out of his ass. If this guy lied, cheated, and stole to make the money he made, or to, rise in the business world, I would think. But at this point, who knows? They might be more married to the image than the reality and just stick with the image. So we'll see. We shall see. I'm not holding my breath. That MAGA is going to turn on him. It remains to be seen how Trump reacts to this. So far, he has not said anything on Truth Social, his little Twitter alternative. But I'm sure he'll be coming out there. I'm not watching it because I'm live. I would love to see how Fox News and the right wing twist themselves into a pretzel to defend this. Because you remember, they had a meltdown over Hillary Clinton and her private server and the classified emails, which, by the way, I've been consistent. She should have been indicted. It's not just Trump. If I had a private server as a government employee and I classified documents that I was emailing, you better believe they would have locked me up and thrown away the key. So Hillary got a pass, no doubt about it. But, oh my God, the meltdown and the right wing and Fox News, they were just champions on the sanctity of classified information. And then when Trump hijacked hundreds of documents of classified documents, apparently by reports, nuclear documents, well, they were declassified. It's just a couple of classified documents. Who cares? So obviously Fox News, the whole right-wing echo chamber, Steve Bannon and his podcast, Steven Crowder, Tim Pool, whoever I'm forgetting, obviously Alex Jones, they don't have any core principles. It's all a grift. It's all, playing the culture war and owning the libs. Obviously they're not consistent, but how are they going to defend this? It's always interesting to me to see the lengths they'll go to move the goalposts and completely change the conversation. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But honestly, right now, I think the question is not if, when Trump announces he's running for president, because I think in Trump's view, Trump doesn't think long term. Trump thinks short term. And I think in Trump's view, running for president in the short term in some way helps shield him from all this, because obviously he would have his base rallying behind him over all this. He'd have the right-wing media rallying around him for all of this. And he could continue to stoke his wink and a nod. Yeah, if they go after me, if they indict me, bad things are going to happen in this country. Bad things are going to happen. I don't think the people will stand for it, which is what he has said about the Mar-a-Lago raid and if he's prosecuted for the classified documents. So I would not put it past you. Put Donald Trump in a corner. He's going to do everything he can to avoid prison. He's going to do everything he can to throw anyone else under the bus but him. And I would not put it past Donald Trump to be a little bit more aggressive and a little less subtle about invoking potential political violence to defend himself. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let me read some super chats. Feel free to ask questions, comments, concerns. Elisa, $10. Happy belated birthday. Why, thank you. I appreciate that, Elisa. Double K, 1999. Thanks, Double K. Tifa, $5. Late B day. Keep up the good work. I appreciate that. Mike Coverdale, $5 on Rockfin. Thanks for the tip. Carrie, tip $20 on Rockfin. Thank you so much. Let's play a little bit more of Letitia James' press conference before we wrap.
Saved an estimated $150 million by receiving favorable interest rates that were only provided based on the false and misleading statements of financial condition. We also believe that he illegally saved millions of dollars in federal tax benefits, conservation easement donations related to Seven Springs in Westchester and the Trump National Golf Club in Los Angeles. And this conduct is not the subject of this action, but we are referring it to the IRS and to the Southern District of New York. The examples I laid out just barely scratch the surface of the misconduct that we have uncovered. The complaint, which all of you should have a copy, is more than 280 pages long. It includes examples from 23 assets that were grossly and fraudulently inflated. And those inflated values were used on Mr. Trump's statements almost every year. All told, we uncovered more than 200 examples of false and misleading asset valuations that were used on his statements. The pattern of fraud and deception that was used by Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization for their own financial benefit is astounding. Inflating the values of assets by whatever means necessary to increase Mr. Trump's purported net worth. And then that net worth was used to further enhance his financial standing, intentionally misrepresenting his financials to obtain incredible economic benefit. It was a scheme that by its very nature became more profitable over time. And it is all in stark violation of the law. As I mentioned earlier, the relief that we are seeking specifically, we are asking the court, again, to permanently bar Mr. Trump, Donald Trump, Eric Trump, Ivanka Trump from serving as an officer or director in any corporation or similar business entity registered or licensed in New York State. We are barring Mr. Trump and his organization from entering into any New York State commercial real estate acquisition for 5 years. We are barring Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization from applying for any loans from any financial institution registered with the New York Department of Financial Services for 5 years. We are requiring Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization to disgorge the financial benefits obtained through the persistent fraudulent practices, an estimated, a baseline, at the minimum of $250 million, and to appoint an independent monitor at the Trump Organization to oversee compliance, financial reporting, evaluations, and disclosures to lenders, insurers, and tax authorities for no less than 5 years. We are requiring the Trump Organization to prepare on an annual basis for the next 5 years a GAAP, a generally accepted accounting practices compliant audited statement financial condition showing Mr. Trump's net worth to be distributed to all the recipients of his prior statements of financial condition. To replace the current trustees of the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust with new independent trustees, or require similar independent governance if a new trust is created. And to permanently bar Alan Weiselberg and Jeffrey McConney from serving in the financial control of any New York corporation. And lastly, to cancel any certificate filed under and by virtue of the provisions of Section 130 of the General Business Law for the corporate entities named as defendants and any other entity controlled by or beneficially owned by Donald Trump, which participated in or benefited from the ongoing financial scheme. In other words, permanently prohibit any of these companies from doing business in the state of New York. I want to be clear. White-collar financial crime is not a victimless crime. When the well-connected break the law to take in more money that they are entitled to, it reduces resources to working people, to regular people, to small businesses, and to all taxpayers. Everyday people cannot lie to a bank about how much money they have in order to get a favorable loan to buy a home or to send their kid to college. And if they did, the government would throw the book at them. Why should this be any different? It is a tale of two justice systems, one for everyday working people and one for the elite, the rich and the powerful. Mr. Trump and his allies may say that these penalties are too harsh or that this is part of a witch hunt. I will remind everyone that this investigation only started after Michael Cohen, his former lawyer, testified before Congress and shed light on this misconduct. And the remedies are consistent with what we have sought for other businesses that committed the same misconduct. This investigation revealed that Donald Trump engaged in years of illegal conduct to inflate his net worth, to deceive banks and the people of the great state of New York. Claiming you have money that you do not have does not amount to the art of the deal. It's the art of the steal.
All right.
And there cannot be different rules.
By the way, just politically speaking, Letitia James just punched her ticket, whatever she wants. If she wants to be a senator, if Gillibrand or somebody, I actually think she could run and beat Gillibrand in New York. She wants to be a congressperson. If she wants to run for governor next go around, the current governor, Kathy Hochul of New York, is going to win re-election probably in November. But she just punched her ticket. And, credit where credit is due. This is a 3-year investigation, 23 assets, meaning 23 properties or companies they found Trump had inflated assets. That's a long, long investigation. And, credit to her. So we'll see what happens. I think we'll obviously update when Trump reacts. I pretty much think it's going to fall continually into the lines of it's a deep state attack. They're trying to stop our movement. They're trying to stop me from becoming president again. They're trying to stop us from saving America or making America great again 2.0. Who knows if it will amount to anything criminally. I think the Manhattan District Attorney's Office is certainly going to look at it because these are crimes perpetrated in New York. But we'll see. We will see. And let's not forget, I think Trump is going to be prosecuted. I really do, for the classified documents, because it's they don't have a defense. Their defense is, he waved the wand and declassified it. That's not how it works. And his lawyers will literally not put in writing in legal filings that they did declassify it. So much so that the special master that they pushed for yesterday, when the special master met with Trump's lawyers and lawyers for the Department of Justice, the special master basically called Trump's bluff and said to his attorneys, do you have evidence that these documents were declassified? Because if you don't, I have to rule in favor of the Department of Justice, who is providing me evidence that these were classified documents. And if you're not going to make a legal argument or filing that these were declassified documents, then I have to assume that they are classified, which means I am not going to allow you to inspect them, which Trump's lawyers want. So we'll see. But to be clear, don't get it twisted. This kind of stuff, it's not just Donald Trump. You got corruption all over this country. That's why I call it the United Corporations of America. You also have Democratic Party politicians that wink and nod because they get a lot of money from Wall Street. They get a lot of money from big financial institutions. They know certain real estate developers, certain businessmen, certain hedge funders, certain nonprofit executives, celebrities. They know they also cook the books, inflate assets, dodge taxes, and they allow them to get away with it because those individuals, those entities, shower them with political cash. So it's not just Donald Trump who does this, but I don't know anyone who has done it, according to this civil case, on the scale that Donald Trump has done it. Thank you for watching. We're going to be live again at 5 o'clock Eastern time with Kim Brown. She'll be hosting at 5 o'clock Eastern, so come back then. A lot of great stories to cover at our normal live stream time. And we'll be back here tomorrow. I'll be back here tomorrow, co-hosting tomorrow with Tina Desiree Berg at 5 o'clock Eastern. And, if anything else breaks, we'll go live before then. But we'll be live again, 5 o'clock Eastern with Kim Brown, holding it down. I know she's got a lot of great stories to cover. If there's any updates when it comes to this Trump stuff, we'll have it at 5 o'clock Eastern. If you are new to Status Coup, subscribe to this channel. We don't only cover Trump. We do something very radical these days for media, corporate or independent, and we're independent. We leave the studio and cover stories on the ground. We've been all over this country covering the unions and covering workers, finally, fighting back and forming unions. We've covered workers on strike. We were on the picket lines with the John Deere workers last year, covering their strike that was successful. We've covered the Amazon workers in Staten Island over a year before they won. We were there. We covered the Buffalo workers trying to organize the first successful Starbucks union before they won. We went up to Buffalo. Obviously, we've been to Flint over and over. Nearly 20 times I've been to Flint, continuing to cover the massive water crisis that's ongoing, by the way, and the cover-up. So we cover stories that the corporate media covers up. So please support us if you can. StatusCoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month to support actual living, breathing, on the ground, independent journalism. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, our trailer on the homepage of our YouTube channel shows just a brief montage of the on the ground reporting we do. Thank you for watching. We'll see you back here at 5 o'clock Eastern.